Hey there, and welcome to the latest episode of the NewIn Podcast. I'm Cathi Harrison. Thank you so much for coming along and joining in on this episode. So this episode, I'm going to say interesting fact. I think it's a bit of a disappointing fact, which is that myself and my colleague Joe have recently taken up paddle. And I just think it's disappointing to just tell me you work in finance without telling me you work in finance. But we've had 2 lessons. We think we're amazing at paddle. That's our new thing. So we'll maybe check in on a future episode and see how that's going. On today's episode, this is all about new business. So we've got a brilliant interview with Hannah interviewing Hayley Millhouse about her experience choosing her career, trying a few different roles before eventually starting her own directly authorised business. Some of the joys, some of the challenges that came with that, including a lot of dilemma that she had around the tech stack, which leads really nicely into the conversation that I then have with Gary Abela. So his whole experience and knowledge is around AI, which is so topical for every single advisor, every single advice firm right now. So he really helps to break it down. I put him on the spot and ask him which are his top tools that he would recommend. So it's one that you definitely do not want to miss. Let's listen in to the interviews with Hayley and with Gary. So I'm here with Hayley Millhouse from Lumina Mortgages Financial Planning. How are you doing today, Hayley?
I'm very well, Hannah. Thank you. Lovely to be speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for your time. So obviously today we're going to be talking all about your practice, your journey to be where you are now. But we're going to start right at the very beginning, which I do hear is a very good place to start if song lyrics are to be believed. So let's go right back to kind of your first experiences with finance. Growing up, what was kind of your relationship to money and kind of what did you see in your household with kind of the way your parents ran things?
Yeah, so a distinct memory that I have was always my mum with the receipts and the bank statements and always sort of like ticking back, making sure we was working within our means and the budget that we had as a family. And also the fact that we had to work for pocket money as well. And it was very clear sort of boundaries in my household. Like we had a lot of freedom with regards to options, with regards to how we wanted to sort of live our life. But it was very clear that either we went on to further education or we went and got a job and we earned our living and we had to pay keep and we had to pay our way within our household. So that's really sort of the key memories that I have.
So in terms of then kind of your journey into financial services, how did you end up? Was it something you ever aspired to be, or was it just kind of something you found along the journey?
Just something I found along the journey. So very typical. It's not in my world, it wasn't I'm going to be a financial advisor. You know, I didn't really know what a financial advisor was, to be perfectly honest. But I always had an interest sort of in business studies. So I did that at school, I did that in college. And then I did some work experience in the local building society. And I really liked that, working with the money, working with the customers, getting to speak to different types of people. And that's really then where I thought, right, okay, I'd quite like my proper job, if you like, following college, to be in some sort of banking industry. And luckily at college, they provide you with details of different banking institutions that were hiring at the time. So there used to be, I think, like recruitment drives that they used to have as, you know, you was coming up to sort of finishing. And I was lucky. It was really scary. I still remember to this day, and getting into Manchester, which is a big deal. And then going into the big office that was on Mosley Street, and you just sat there and you had to do all these tests, and you know, it was really daunting. But I got the job. I got the job at the local branch, and it was amazing. And I felt so proud to be wearing the uniform and going there. And yeah, I loved it. It was a really interesting experience. I certainly wouldn't be where I am today without them. There was quite a lot of young people that worked in the branch, but on a sort of part-time basis. And they were going to uni, and they said, Hayley, why are you not going to uni? And I was like, oh, I just don't think it's for me. And they really encouraged me actually to apply. And once I graduated and then was looking for further roles within the bank, there was a private banking administration role that had come up. That was my start then of my journey into the regulated side of the business, because we was working then in the investment side. Well, it was a bit different back then because the relationships managers handled the banking and the investment side of things as well. So, but that was like my first step into that world, and I absolutely loved it. I was very lucky to have some really strong mentors and people that believed in me and really encouraged me. So we went through quite a lot of difficult times at that time. We had the financial crisis. There was a lot of change. The departments were changing, job roles were changing. But with that change, always was a lot of opportunity. And that's just the way that I always thought about it. So, right, okay, there's nothing I can do about the changes, but what is it that I can do to help the teams, or what can I get involved in that will also help me to learn and just be able to better myself and to get a better skill set and a better understanding. And it's always sort of put me in good stead, really. So, you know, went through my future leaders to become a team leader. Being a team leader within the regulated environment helped then to understand like the wider business, because they allowed you to be part of the leadership team. So I was sat in board meetings with area directors that were managing advisors. So having that that perspective was was really beneficial. It was quite difficult then when I then became an advisor. I was no longer part of that team anymore. I was, part of the advisor team, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an advisor. I wanted to help people. And I think really, even just going back from my branch days and seeing people struggling, it was, we have a great opportunity to help people, and that is what has drawn me to this role.
In terms of then how you found yourself in the position to set up Lumina, talk me through kind of that phase in your career and in your life, and the kind of questions that were going through your head that were kind of pushing you to set up the business.
Yeah, so I suppose it's various different events really that got me to this point. So from the big PLC that I was working with, there was many changes. They got rid of the whole advice team back in 2016. And that was quite a challenge. I think I would have been institutionalized still to this day because it was the only thing I'd ever known. But sometimes that push then takes you on a different path. And I do believe everything happens for a reason. But it was a tough time. And I got an opportunity then to work within a network. And that was interesting. So what I would say from working within a big banking PLC is that you get really solid foundations from your learning perspective. It is very black and white. I went to a network and it was like, wow, okay, so you've got a little bit of autonomy here about how you deal with your clients, because the restrictiveness of the black and whiteness actually could end up being a bit of a detriment to your client, because you're just not being able to have that level of flexibility that you need just to have that real personal approach. So it was an eye-opener. But to a certain degree, there was a level there. A couple of advisors that I'd seen were still doing fact finds on the back of bag packets, and I was a bit like, oh yeah, I'm not really comfortable with that. So let's try and get a happy medium of, not so black and white, but also let's still following a process. Then got the opportunity to become employed for a DA firm, but it was a different type of DA firm. It was a tech-led DA firm. So again, it was that opportunity of growing the advice side of the business from the very beginning. But what that did give me was a great respect for a lot of different jobs, a lot of creative jobs, a lot of technical jobs, of understanding the challenges of wording between an advisor and a techie. So that was great fun. But just shortly after I had my second baby in September 2023, then that business was finally wound up. And then I found myself again, right, okay, what do I do this time? But I'd loved having the autonomy of being directly authorised, but also having the experience. I'd had the experience then of working directly with the FCA. So I understood more about what their expectations were. Wasn't quite as scary, they are scary, but they're humans as well. I think that's the biggest thing that I should say. And as long as you're doing things, the right things for the benefit of your clients, your employees, for the business, then actually you shouldn't have anything to worry about with them, as long as you can demonstrate that. So I was like, right, okay, what do I do? I had a very new baby, so I thought I'm really going to struggle here with trying to get myself another job at the level that I want, with the flexibility that I am going to need now moving forward. I'm at a different stage of my life. And I have a very good friend who we've been friends for 25 years, so since college, and she's a mortgage advisor. She's done a very similar sort of journey to me, started in the big PLC, then went to move on to a mortgage brokerage, so had a lot of experience. And I reached out to her in January 24 and said, do you fancy doing this? And yeah, luckily for me, she said, yeah, why not? So would I have done it on my own? I would probably have said no. It has been a real challenge in getting everything prepared and ready, getting the application submitted. And from application submission to authorization, it was 10 months.
What were the biggest barriers that the two of you faced?
So the biggest barriers really were from a personal perspective, as in Lisa was still working for a broker. There's no guarantee that you're going to get your direct authorization through. And one of the prerequisites of doing the DA is to have references. So the way that we were sort of planning to do it, we was always really open in our business plan with our plans that Lisa would join once we knew that the business could be directly authorized, because of the fact that it's just a true fact within this industry. If her employer knew that she was going to do this, they would have let her go. She respected her employers so much, but she wanted this opportunity to do it. So that was a real big, what would you do? How do we deal with this? And we was lucky enough, actually, because I think it is a good point to reflect on, of going through the direct authorization process. The FCA, although I have mortgage permissions and I run a mortgage, there was a mortgage side of the business that I run previously, they said because I'd not advised on mortgages, they wouldn't give me mortgage permissions. So that was a massive bomb on our whole business plan. Do I have the financial resources and the desire to want to go and do it on my own, with the potential that Lisa might never even get authorized to come on the business with me? So we had a lot of discussions, and one of the things that we came to terms with throughout this process is, if you don't ask, you don't get it. And this is where I come back to the human side of the FCA. So we had to think about our different options, spoke to them, and we had a really great case handler. And we managed to work our way through that. And if we didn't get our DI authorization through, then we would definitely have gone down sort of the network path. But because I'd worked with a network before, and because I'd done the DA, DA was sort of really where I felt we wanted our business to be.
Well, then I'm going to follow up then. So once you actually got given the keys to the car, what were the biggest challenges that you kind of faced in those initial months?
Everything takes longer than what you anticipate. We probably could have done more with regards to the prep of getting us ready for get-go. However, you're sort of limited because you can't be signing contracts with people until you've got that rubber stamp. And also we felt a bit like, oh God, we don't really want to be wasting people's time if we actually don't know this is going to be a goer. So then getting everything else in, we sort of knew the names of who we wanted to speak to with regards to mortgage clubs, CRMs, investment proposition platforms, things like that. So we'd got all that in place, but we probably hadn't anticipated then how long it would take to then have those conversations and sort of evaluate where we wanted to go. Because you feel a great pressure of wanting to get this right. It's great being DA, but there's also a level of apprehension of, oh my God, I want to get this perfect for my clients. And I think we just had to take a step back and say, as long as it works and we're doing things compliantly and the customer experience is great and the outcome is going to be right, then in mine and Lisa's perfect world, like we've just got to take a step back and evolve. And I think that's what the Verve actually taught me more than anything, that our business plan will probably look very different sort of in the next 12, 24 months, and not to sort of get too bogged down with that. You've just got to get going.
No, definitely. You got to get that momentum behind you.
Yeah.
And sort of just bob and weave. That was.
Yeah.
So who are your target demos? You know, who are the people you're most looking to serve?
Yeah, so it's people sort of mine and Lisa's age. So we turned 40 not that long ago. We're sort of at those next stages of our lives. We need to start really thinking about retirement, and just really, I think you get to this age, you get to 40 and it's a bit like, all right, I just need to reflect, I think, on what's happened and what is now happening to me. And yeah, just think a bit more logically about the lifestyle that you want. There is so much noise in this world that it's so easy to get bogged down with the negativity, and I think now is a good time actually just to take control of the things that you can control and decide what type of life you want to lead ultimately. Also, I really enjoy those that are just approaching retirement, because that's such a massive, big financial decision. And one of the things that you see is actually, although they've had workplace pension schemes, defined contribution ones, that is, they've never had to engage in sort of investment planning before. They don't even realise they've been invested. You know, clients don't realise. So there's a massive education piece there about the longevity of the part and planning, and, you know, making sure that they can achieve what they want to achieve, you know, throughout their retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I find that a fascinating space myself. It's something that I definitely cut my teeth on a lot when I was first coming up as an advisor. So obviously we're still within our first year, and one of the biggest things, whether that's in business, whether that's in sporting culture, just in life in general, is that our mistakes often teach us more than our successes. So it's a potentially difficult question to answer knowing we're on a podcast. But Hayley, what's the biggest mistake that you've made that's taught you the most as you've been setting up Lumina?
Yeah, I would probably say the tech stack, and just understanding what it is that you want to deliver. Yeah, and the costs, actually. The costs is a big one of that. In order for you to run your business with all the things that you need efficiently, to get really good outcomes for your clients, it's very costly. And I think I'd probably misunderstood, because I've always sort of like worked in restricted type of environments before. So being completely independent, which I absolutely love, it comes with its own challenges of making sure that you're doing the right research, that you've got everything right in place. But yeah, there's a lot of cost in the tech stack, and there's a lot of sales pitches. So be mindful of that. I think I wasn't really quite prepared for the whole sale pitch. The key things that Lisa and I have said when we have been engaging with tech stats and things like that have been sort of efficiency, but also their customer service. So have we got a contact? Can we speak to someone? That is, for a small business like ours, we need to be able to pick up the phone and speak to someone. And everybody that we've engaged with now has that, because we were very clear, you know, what is the support that you're going to be able to give us as a new business. So I would think that was definitely a big thing for us. I am really pleased and encouraged by the way that the tech is moving, the competition that's now out there, you know, the raising standards with regards to, you know, efficiency, embracing technology, updating things, moving things forward. I do think there is a desire now to understand that your advisor is your client and their expectations are for a good end-to-end journey. You know, that's an expectation, particularly from a consumer duty perspective. So it is encouraging to see it. I think there is still work improvement. I think the challenge is there is just not that one unicorn that will do everything. So you can get as close as possible, but there's still little bits.
So in terms of kind of the how you've ended up speaking to me, Hayley, because obviously there's the connection with the Verve Foundation. So how did you first hear about the foundation and the programs that they were offering?
So I've always been really lucky, particularly in my previous role, that I've worked with some really great people that had expertise in the compliance side, expertise in the finance side, marketing side. And when you're doing your own business, then you've got to do it yourself, plus going independent, so just keeping abreast of everything that's going on. So I was just going out trying to actively look for communities that I could be part of, and I've been grateful, like just learning about the different scenarios that different advisors have been coming across, everybody's different journeys, throwing a question out there if about a provider or what's the best way to go. It just makes you feel a little bit less lonely, and that you could spend hours just looking for something, but you put a message on the group and someone's there like that, and you're like, wow, you've just saved me a day a day of research, thank you so much.
No, definitely. And in terms of what would you say is the biggest thing that you've actually taken from it, if there is one big thing?
So actually it's the introduction as well to different providers and upcoming sort of tech providers and things that actually culturally have the same values of yourself. I've found that really intriguing. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've taken away and enjoyed, having those contacts and being able to get in touch with them and build my business on that basis.
In terms of kind of where we are now, what was it like that moment you kind of onboarded that first client and things became a bit more kind of like, okay, this is actually happening?
Well, my first client was actually my husband. He was my little guinea pig, which was quite nice, just to make sure that everything worked. He could give us some feedback, which was really important. It was just a relief to actually see everything work. It went through a compliance check, because that's what happens when you first get your business. A lot of things have to go through compliance, our compliance partner. So it was just like, right, okay, yeah, we can do this. Like, our files were good, our advice was good, our process is good, our clients happy. We're really happy with the decisions we've made, and it took us a while to get to that point of, So it was, it's a nice feeling.
So, talk to me about the future then. So, what does 5 years' time look like for you and Lisa?
We probably have liked to have hired some administration staff to help us with that, so we can concentrate more on our client-facing role. We hate social media. we know we know we have to do it, but it's not something that we're comfortable with. So we would just like all our clients to come from word of mouth. I think the biggest compliment that you can get as an advisor is for another client or somebody that you've spoken to, is for them to refer you to one of their friends, family, or somebody that you speak to. And I think that is where we want to be, for people to say, we've been to Lisa and Hayley, we had a really great service, we can see the value in it. And yeah, they've changed our lives. I think that's.
Yeah, because that is the power of financial planning, is the fact that we can change lives and have a real impact on clients. And as you say, there's nothing better than someone having that experience. It's like, it's the proper seal of approval, like you can get as many unbiased reviews or Google reviews or whatever your platform of preference is, but actually that reality of saying, you looked after me really well, I'm going to introduce you to my mum, my sister, my best mate. Like there's nothing better than that, really, is there?
No. And also, I think looking back at the clients and their plans and seeing, okay, where are we with them plans? Yeah.
So for those of us listening to this podcast who are thinking about doing this, maybe they're an advisor themselves, or maybe they're another role, and they're thinking, well, actually, I'd love to set up my own practice. What would be your elevator pitch of enthusiasm to them?
Oh, be prepared for a roller coaster, but the ups far outweigh the lows. Be prepared financially, with your paperwork, get support, don't do it on your own, and go for it, because you can do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Hayley. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey through finance, through becoming a business owner, and everything in between. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Hannah. Lovely to speak to you too.
NewIn Podcast, supported by Royal London, the lead sponsor of the Verve Foundation.
Hi, Gary, Abela. Welcome to the NewIn Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Do you want to start by telling people a little bit about your backstory and your experience in the world of finance and tech?
Sure, happy to. I'll keep 25 years down into hopefully 2 minutes for you. So I started my life at the Hartford, which was an insurance company. I had East Anglia as a broker consultancy patch. So this was pre-RDR, selling unit-linked investment bonds to advisors, helping them grow their business.
What was the upfront commission? What was it high?
7.5%, 3.5% trail. They were the heady days. That was where we cut our teeth, so to speak. So I understand the journey that went from advice, which was ultimately selling product, to actually where we are today, which is doing financial planning for people. And that journey post RDR has been a really fascinating time, and a lot for firms, particularly, people that are going directly authorized, to actually understand, right, the business model behind how you deliver advice has fundamentally changed. And then that brings me into AI and where I moved to. I spent some time at Legg Mason, about 15 odd years, working on advisory distribution, helping people at the time, understand how to start charging for the proposition. What's your value prop? How do you move from being commission based to actually charging somebody for your services? And I left then to do AI. I spun out a few different products and businesses in Germany. I then focused on document processing in Real Away. That got acquired. I did some time at Saturn, some consultancy gigs for some other tech vendors. And now I mainly consult PE-backed consolidators in understanding how to leverage AI to help the unlock of the capacity problem we have, in that we don't have enough humans to do the business that we want to do at the scale that we're now moving in.
I just like that you're like, 10 years here, 15 years there, but you look about 20. So I don't really know how that works. My maths isn't making it math.
Lots of olive oil.
You mentioned obviously it was like 10 years ago that you started to get into AI. I think there's a big difference between people who were into it versus, most of the world that, it was once ChatGPT landed and all of a sudden it was like, here's a product, here's AI. What do you think is kind of, important from the knowledge that you've got and the approach that you've had versus as a business owner, just all of a sudden I'm trying to grapple with AI, but it's in the context of whatever this product is?
At the end of the day, the advice business is, you're not in the business of technology, you're in the business of advice, right? And so by virtue of that, you're always going to be led by what a vendor solution is. Back office systems, all of the different, things that we've been working with for the last 20 years, we always complain that we have to change the way we work to fit around the system rather than the other way around. And that's where I think the biggest advice I give to people right now is that mindset is what's different. Is today, with the technologies that are available, it means you can start to orchestrate your technology around what's the operating model that you want. And so my advice to people is, it's very tempting to just go in and say, right, I need a meeting note solution. I need an automated suitability letter solution. That vendor has it. That vendor has it. Let's go try that out. And that's fantastic. I always recommend people doing that. But the reality set is that you're not setting your growth strategy as a firm. And I think invest the time in saying, right, this is my operating model. These are the things that I want to try to remove the friction in, and have a plan and a roadmap yourself for what it is that you need for your business. Because then when you do that analysis of what's the right vendor to work with, because you're going to have to work with vendors, you're not going to build these things yourselves. You then understand whether they fit in my journey and whether they fit in my operating model, and then more importantly, where they don't fit. Because then that's when you then start to have a realistic view as to, are they going to be the player that hits everything? Which, by the way, actually doesn't exist today. There is no silver bullet end-to-end, AI automated journey. So being realistic about where we are in the cycle, and not being oversold by being undereducated around what it is that you want. So understand what you want, and then that way I think you tend to have a better relationship with the startups as well as a result.
Earlier in this episode, we talked to Hayley and talk about her experience starting her own business. And I sometimes think maybe if it's a new business and you haven't got legacy products already, then you've got an advantage because you're coming in at new and you're going, this is going to be my operational model and I'll do it from scratch. Is that the case? Or as you say, since there's no kind of silver bullet or end to end, are they all kind of grappling with the same challenges regardless?
The reality set is that actually you're still going to need some construct of the traditional back office systems out there, because the AI players are currently automating like pain points in the workflows. They're not giving you the full piece that you need. And so to some extent, what it's reframing your mind in is, okay, well, maybe I just need one core license of one, but then actually my practice management tends to be in maybe another solution, advisory AI, a Saturn, a Planner Power, whatever the tools that are out there, because that's going to be closer to my automation of these pain points and ensuring that we're more efficient, but have a system of record that sits at the back, because that's actually how I need to run my business as well, because they're converging. And I think that's the reality set is we're trying to make decisions about technology landscape that's moving extremely quickly for the first time.
So fast.
Yeah.
And so I think the key thing is to actually ensure that you can be agile and nimble with it. And so if you're fresh and new, you've got that capability, right? Because you've not got this whole existing backbook that you have to deal with. And you can actually watch and see how these convergence actually happens. And then, make sure that you can move to the right player or switch to another player if you have to. I think there's an informed decision that you make, and that makes you feel comfortable with the decision that you've made rather than regretting it or thinking that actually something's better elsewhere. I think the reality, though, is that we want to get to a point where you just have one key player, because nobody really wants to have, another 11 different solutions and then now another 11 different AI players. That's just unrealistic.
Sorry, so in terms of actually choosing the ones to trial then, so kind of one of the challenges Hayley found, and actually I've had this from a few advisors recently where they're saying, obviously you will talk to a AI provider and they'll say, our tool already does all of these things and here's this extensive roadmap and everything's going to be delivered in the next 3 months. And then they sign up, and then I think there's always an element of how much of it is that the system isn't quite delivering what I hoped it would? How much of it is, am I not using it properly? Do I need more training? Like, I think people kind of second guess themselves. And a few times I've had people ask, like, almost, how do I get a better understanding at the outset of if this is going to be the right tool for me, or can they not? Like, do they just have to try it and see if it's full of crap or not?
Well, look, at the end of the day, technology always takes longer and costs more money than people say it's going to do. And we're as an industry, we're accustomed to being underwhelmed by delivery of people's roadmaps, right? That's not going to change. In fact, it's probably accelerated with the upstarts that have come into the market, because they're first-time builders. And so they have the best will in the world in thinking that these things are going to come. But in reality, it takes longer. It's much harder to do robustly. And so I always take this rule of thumb. If they tell you 3 months, it's minimum 6. And just keep that in. Because then it just keeps everyone happy. Well, it doesn't keep you happy, but at least keeps you realistic. When you start to think that these firms can really customize and build things specific for you, that's really problematic to do at scale. And that's just a reality. They're also young businesses. We forget that a lot of these companies are under 3 years old. They're running at 100% pace. They've got, and I've been on the side of it. They've got calls from 8:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night, back to back every half an hour. They are trying their best to kind of keep up with the influx, but it's an operating model that's going to go through some teething problems. And so it's to some extent giving them some time, but also holding them accountable and giving yourself that exit point to say, do you know what? I've lost my trust in the fact that you're going to deliver this and we can go on this journey together. Because the one key thing to the mindset is that this is a journey. It's not a solution that's there. And you've got to find a player that you've built a good relationship with, that you can trust and is going to get there, because they're all going to converge to achieving these things eventually. It's just about what do they prioritize, and how do they really understand your business and understand advice? If they do, that for me is always a really big tick point, because that's at the core.
I absolutely agree. There was people have said about when companies or some individuals learn AI, or they've got some strong coders and they're just walking around with a big AI hammer and going, give me a nail to hit, give me a nail to hit, and they haven't come through finance. Then they go, oh, a suitability report, well, that's easy, it's words on a page, AI can do that. And actually that lack of sector knowledge and the weird bubble that finance is in is kind of a big gap for them.
You know, we keep running to use cases that I don't think are necessarily things we want to automate away. Look, suitability is subjective by its very nature. Now, can we have a tool that means a lot of the grunt work is done? Absolutely. Let's get 2025. So let's be realistic about what we want it to do. If you're sitting there and think you've got a complex pension consolidation case, no way do you want to have a large language model which basically predicts words from previous words that have been said to generate that for you, because guarantee you're going to have human verification tax and you're going to spend more time editing it than it would have been if you wrote it in the first place. So upskill your own understanding of what good use cases are for your business, which aren't, and go and find vendors for them. But be realistic about what it is that you're asking them to do. And look, there's another thing around AI. We need to educate ourselves a little bit. AI means a lot of different things. It's not just, you know, the AI and the vendors that you see today, or people sprinkling AI into existing tech stack, right? There is core machine learning, understanding evidence. Can I actually be able to go back to a data point and say that's exactly why we made that decision, versus actually something that's a little bit backblocks that generates a reasoning and generates something that sounds correct. The regulator at some point with the FCA Mills review is moving to, I believe, understanding evidence in the reasons why you've done what you've done, and simply saying this is our process is not going to be good enough. I think a lot of those upstarts will have problems when they just use ChatGPT like models, because they don't have a lot of control around what's gone in and how do we evidence that back. And so at some point we're going to have to actually, I think, unwind a lot of these things to then actually deal with the regulator requirement going forward.
So I'm just going to put you on the spot and say, out of the AI tools for financial planners in the UK right now, which are the top three that you think you're seeing?
So I think Saturn, they're one of the biggest brands out there. I do believe they've just relaunched their suitability letter generator, which I've heard is getting good responses with. Look, they're the first people that are actually starting to hire power planners in their business. And that for me is a really good signal of direction for them. They're also extremely well funded. They won't need to do a fundraise for a while. And so they've got the time to really build out the things that they've been dreaming to do. So from that perspective, they go up there. I think Planner Pal is interesting for me purely because it's so natively integrated into Xplan. And so if you're an Xplan player, it's a no-brainer to use because it's already functioned in. Palindrome is a new firm that I've started to come onto my radar. They've taken more of an agentic business process approach. So they're a bit like the symphony orchestra conductor on all of the systems that you have, whether it's a back office system, and they can bridge the gap in a lot of that data sort of breakages that we have, and then spin out and create different AI tools off the back of it. But they very much go in at, they're not bothering with, end of the market. They're going straight in at the consolidator route.
And then one other question around, I'm brand new, I'm getting started. I want to put some fundamentals in place that are going to see me through the next 10, 15 years, no matter what happens with tech or AI. What would your advice be? What would your tips be for getting started from scratch in a way that's going to give you that flexibility in future?
Yeah, I would try to keep it simple. Start with simplicity, but you overcomplicate things too soon. Like, for example, you might want a very sophisticated cash flow planning tool, but actually maybe the one that you have in your back office that's already there out of the box is good enough. That makes it easier for you, right? Because you don't have another system there. You don't take data from one system, put it into a document, take it through, get that document, bring it back. You're already creating complexity. And so I think if you're like a newly directly authorized firm, is keep it simple. Try to find the best of what you can get from maybe one of the new players. Maybe it's a pilot, maybe it's an afternoon, something that actually enables you to have AI enabled workflows. And then you can start to build on top of that. A big important part is ensuring that actually you have access to your data, and that's written in your terms and conditions. Do look at the contracts, do understand and ask the question, if I decide that I don't want to work with you anymore, how do I receive my data and how do you send it back to me? That's important because that's the carryover then to ensuring that you don't have that lock-in. Because if people are not going to give that to you, then that's a question that you have to ask yourself, right? If they don't, or they're not going to, then you are now in bed with them for the next 10 years. And so that's also not a problem if you believe in their journey and you think they're going to be a good partner for you. But just be mindful and aware of that. I think it's always a really good DD question to have in mind.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming along, for dialing it in from hopefully sunny Berlin. Can't tell if it's sunny out of your window.
Raining at the moment.
Oh no.
Being there. Thank you as well.
Hopefully the rain's getting out of the way so you can have a lovely few days holiday. But thanks so much, Gary, and I will see you very, very soon.
All right.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
So there we go, one more episode of the NewIn Podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who's taken part in it today. Absolutely amazing to hear from Hayley and to hear from Gary and to learn so many new terms in the world of AI. We will be back very soon for a new episode with one of our new talent students, so we will see you then.
If you're interested in joining one of our advisor programs or being a supporter of our mission, then head on over to vervefoundation.co.uk.